Good evening, Paulette. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. To our audience, I will just introduce Paulette. After 12 years apprenticeship at Sri Aurobindo Ashram, inspired by great sadhaks, in 1985, Paulette Hadnagy joined Auroville, working on the Matrimandir's roof and scaffoldings. A member of the Laboratory of Evolution Center for Human Unity, 1986 to 1990, instituted by Vedic scholar Kireet Joshi. Since then, her svadharma is research on integral yoga and mother's guidelines for Auroville's ideal society. Paulette has published 13 books compiling on the subject and has displayed some 30 photographic exhibitions, 7 of them on contemporary architecture, as by Roger Angers' original request. Thank you, Paulette, for joining us. Over to you, Paulette, for your talk on Matrimandir's roof, those full moon concreting days that determined your destiny.
Yes, I have a long background because I started with the Sri Aurobindo Ashram in 1973, and in 85 I joined Auroville. But I decided to speak on particularly on work on Matrimandir, because not only it is this that brought me finally to Auroville, but just because it belongs to a special age. Today it looks like a dream, but in fact it was very real. And some people were advanced spiritually, others were not, but what we had in common was the idealism. And this is only with this kind of people Auroville could be founded. And finally, I had no choice but to leave the Sri Aurobindo Ashram and the great sadhaks that were my silent teachers and move to Auroville. So I will, all the photographs you are seeing here, except the 3 that I took in 85 when I joined Auroville, are from the Auroville archives. And it took me 6 months with Photoshop to put them back on stage. I displayed 2 exhibitions, and people very often were crying seeing these exhibitions, because it is an Auroville that is no more. Some people are still alive, also people who work at Matrimandir, but they're very withdrawn. And that's why I decided to concentrate on that, because it is this that made me to realize what it means to be part of the avatar circle. It means the avatar is not an ordinary guru. The avatar is society, is the ideal society. And it takes birth over the ages when the Dharma is lost, when a great leap is needed. And it takes birth with his own people. And then when it's not possible to pursue the mission any longer, the avatar discard the body, and these people also go. So this is the kind of realization that I came through after 52 years with Sri Aurobindo and the Mother, and the last 41 in Auroville. But all commence with what I'm going to read you now. I first started working at the Matrimandir construction in 1977-78, cycling from Pondy to participate to the full moon non-stop concreting. People from all over Auroville, teens too, joined the collective feast. We reached the top climbing aerial ladders. Danger and fatigue were alien to us. When in the great adventure, there was but joy. Work at the Matrimandir was the unifying power of a young, idealistic society. Those were years of freedom, the freedom of the soul living content with nothing. Now you'll be very surprised when I read this. I slept nestled in the hall of the urn in the amphitheater. And my partner, in fact, my future second husband, under the banyan tree. When the dew and the mosquitoes' assault became too heavy, we shifted with our sleeping bags to a friend's room in the Matrimandir camp. Small rooms under a kit roof, a single long basin, 4 cubicles with showers, 4 toilets. Those were the collective assets. You'd also be surprised to find out what kind of people live like this. Was an elite, spiritually, culturally, and precisely because they were people who had everything, and that was not enough, they were ready to give up everything and start in what the mother called the great adventure. I will never forget the concentrated silence of the camp in the evening. The only sound, subdued, was that of our Ross cassettes of classical music. Here you see some pictures of workers. Headset that you see on the right side, on the back, is still alive, is a giant German. Savitra to the front has left Auroville long ago, is one of the major ideologues of the early Auroville, and he has written some famous books. And in fact, he wrote a book chronicling the fighting with the Sri Aurobindo Society. And I happened to read that book when I was at the Delhi Ashram, going to the Himalaya there. I read the book in one night, and this is when I decided to join Auroville. The contention with the Sri Aurobindo Society had commenced, and money was scarce. But as we worked at the construction, we were lodged and fed for free. The manual work was carried on by the residents. They did the cooking, a lady who will become an Aurovillian help, and the cleaning. So there were no servants. The mother didn't want servants or paid worker in Auroville, and the camp was dead. After lunch, a gorgeous kibbutzing girl, Noah, washed the floor of the kitchen. We two shared the cooking shifts. The meals, thrice a day, were delicious. Sometimes we got a slice of cake, a treat for us accustomed to the stern regime of the ashram dining room. So this is an archive photograph showing is not the camp, but is very interesting because it shows how the Aurovillians lived with absolutely nothing. So it was not only the prerogative of the camp of those people working every day, and then once a month for the full moon concreting, the whole Auroville would join. But everybody was was living like this. So you can see in the second photographs, they are all together just watching a microscopic TV. And on the bottom, you see the aspiration huts. So the 34 aspiration huts were paid by Gilbert Gaucher, who was very close to Roger Anger and is also part of the System Engineering Galaxy Conference in Paris. So he paid for all the huts and lived in one of them. So those huts there were 2 huts with a common bathroom. Auroville was inhabited by youth who mainly live in huts. Bicycles were the current transport. When not available, people walked. For example, Shraddhavan, the founder of Savitri Bhavan, used to walk with a group of people from Aspiration up to the Matrimandir nursery every Sunday to listen to Narad talking and singing. There is also a report by Shraddhavan that once she was a teacher, she walked with all the students up to Srima, which was 12 kilometers far away. So this was normal. Motorbikes were rare and used only for work. The mother never came to Auroville, but at the subtlest level, her all-pervasive presence was tremendous. She had freed the spirit of the age, and those were her children, the offspring of the 1968 revolution. I will add no more on this because the bashish was quite exhaustive yesterday, but it's a fact that the mother founded Auroville in February 68, and in May, the French May began, and since then, it was particularly in the West, nothing would ever be the same. So some people came to Auroville, embodying that spirit. We had come to build an entirely new society, and there was no way back. It was a mass movement, irrepressible and irrefragable, spreading by contagion. We had finished with the old values and needs. Nothing would ever be the same. We had entered an uncharted territory. Everything was to be discovered anew. Auroville was the great adventure. The Great Adventure is a text that Mother wrote before founding Auroville, but after was completely adopted by Auroville together with a dream, because Auroville was founded by those people. So this is one of the earliest photographs of work at the Matrimandir. In fact, the people were moving the earth to dig out the foundation. At first, only Aurovillians wanted to do this, but then after several months, it would take too long. So finally, and it was very contentious, the Aurovillians accepted to have also paid workers doing. Every month, a few days at a time, I climbed by aerial ladders to the top of Matrimandir. But the camp residents did it for years. Back to Pondicherry was pervaded by a feeling of incompleteness, almost a sense of guilt. It's true. What does spiritual mean? Me sitting in the hollow of the Samadhi tree, writing jnana and bhakti poems, passing into yogic trances, in fact Samadhi, doing dry flowers collage, telling an inviting tale of oneness, or those pioneers with feet and arms stains by the red soil, instead of hieratic immaculate clothes, wearing shorts and t-shirt and rubber chapels. As I will later experience, in the green belt, even drinking water could be a conquest. Yeah, I went living where there was the tallest windmill, wood windmill at first, of Auroville, but if there was no wind, it was not turning. So we were getting water through a bullock cart sent for free by Shraddhavan in Grace. And this was normal. At times, there was hardly food to eat. This is something very beautiful. If there is some time, I wish to tell a very beautiful story that I was very close to the General Krishna Tiwari family, and his wife Kamla told me that they had not yet moved to Auroville, but Dipti and Arjun were there, and it was a time, because of the fight with the Sri Aurobindo Society, but sometimes the only food were roots or peanuts. So once Kamla and Krishna invited Tilti and Arjun, and they prepared a big meal, and the couple refused to eat it, saying, "We cannot, our brother and sister are starving, we cannot eat." So this show by what spirit Auroville comments. When I mean the avatar circle, I mean this. So now I'm passing to the second part when I moved to Auroville in 1985. And this is not my hut, because at the time I did not even took photographs, but it had a Bacameron floor like this, and it's quite typical of the way the pioneers lived. After years bathing in the atmosphere of Sri Aurobindo's and Mother Greek sadhaks, nurtured by their silent example, I wonder, were the Auroville pioneers my new teachers? In 1985, I left Paradise on Earth as Nolini was Sri Aurobindo's greatest disciple, the secretary of the ashram, the one who was in jail with Sri Aurobindo, and also the one who, as a philosophy student, had access to a chemical lab and manufactured an experimental bomb. So those were the early comrades of Sri Aurobindo, and the early ashramites came from there. And I moved to Auroville Greenbelt, living with oil and kerosene lamps for the next 14 years in the hut I built under harsher conditions than at the camp. In fact, you should know that the camp had a long list of people wishing to live there, because at least living there you had electricity, while electricity in the Greenbelt was banned, and you had for sure you had water and all these things. But those who live outside the camp, in fact, aspiration was also quite good from this point of view. But those who didn't live at the camp or in aspiration, and particularly those who, like me, and I'm talking about 85, so not 1968, everything was absolutely possible. It was really a choice. And if you read the book of Prakash Kapoor, at a certain point he talks about Johnny Walker. Johnny Walker belonged to one of the wealthiest family of United States. He also lived in a hut along a canyon with nothing. So the one you see now is Anna Maria. Anna Maria is an historical personage in Auroville. Just a complete video should be dedicated to her. Anyhow, she was the one hosting me and Robert, my future husband, in the camp. And she worked for 8 years after in fact teaching the children on the beach, the village children on the beach. Then she moved to Matrimandir. She worked for 8 years. And what you see now is what in 85, when I joined Auroville to work at the Stark on the roof, we had to cross this passage every time. That's why I put it here. But it's not me, it's Anna Maria. The Matrimandiria, so here I'm talking about 85, when I joined. The Matrimandir area ladders were gone, but the roof where I work at the stars was still accessed adventurously. That's why I showed a photograph of Anna Maria. I work like a man. The small woman I am carried heavy metal pipes in tandem with a man a meter taller, the sadhu of Auroville, who lived like one. He was no longer my body, he was Mother Force that worked through me, and the experience was collective. We all felt her force. Work, as always with no security, was an exhilarating experience. Bravery and contagious enthusiasm in an electrifying atmosphere were our bread and butter. Endurance, resilience made us one in a way I'd never fathomed. It was Auroville, the mothers, incubator of the supramental society of Gnostic beings. So this is not yet my photograph, but it must have been taken around the same time. So it gives an idea because we work there. As you see, there is no security whatsoever. So when they clean the Matrimandir's discs today, this is very safe. It's very nice to do, it's much acrobatic, but it's 100% safe. Well, here there was absolutely nothing. And it was not only people who worked through sadhaks, but even teenagers work like this. And by the way, ashramites, including Champaklal, I've not posted here, I posted in one of my books. There was a bus coming every day from the ashram loaded with ashramites, including Champaklal, coming to work. And this is already 85. Before, it was even more hazardous. We are done with the senescent legacy of the past. We were the first builders of a new world in the making. Experimenting new ways of living was one with unending becoming. Status and culture and creed, what we had been so far, what and who we had left behind vanished altogether. It was a new birth. The mother, in fact, speaks of new birth when she speaks about the first of the three transformations of integral yoga, the psychic one. But in the case of the people of those years, it really was a new word because you could see anyone. There were scholars, there were academics, there were villagers, there were teenagers. Everybody was one. There was no status, we were all same. A first realization dawn, being part of the avatar circle. This is what those people were. The Sri Aurobindo Ashram apprenticeship remains my foundation, one the unconditional surrender of a true sadhak. Yeah, because these are my bases. I am an Aurovillian, but I join as if I was an ashramite. My faith in the mother and mother guidelines are same as if I was an ashramite. So I read it again. A first realization dawn, being part of the avatar circle. The Sri Aurobindo Ashram apprenticeship remain my foundation, one with the unconditional surrender of a true sadhak. But an Aurovillian's dharma is to foster the advent of the Gnostic supramental society, of which the radiant Matrimandir sun, Mother Shrine, is the symbol and messenger. This is in fact the big difference between the ashram and Auroville. In both cases is the avatar circle, but the ashram is for the three transformation of integral yoga, ideally. and is an individual path. But the Auroville is the ideal society, which makes it much more difficult because the mother explained very well that even when you face and eventually surmount your obstacles and you think you have won a big victory, then everything starts again because it is collective, the sadhana is collective. And that's why our is so difficult and so slow. Everything is so slow. At first, many people like me, and people, because I was married, so I was coming and going, but there were people who lived for years and years at the ashram and then moved here. One is Michael Zelnick, for example. Another one is Jean, who was teaching, or Anandi, Argentinian, who was also a teacher. So we had that base. And then we felt the same thing. It's not just our own sadhana, it is society. And so the plunge into Auroville was unavoidable. So these are the 3 photographs that I took in 85 when I joined, because I had taken a pledge on Mother's Centenary Day to come and work at Matrimandir. And these show you that we work still in 85 without any security. The ultimate quest that began, this was the lever. At our inmost center, there is a free being, wide and knowing, who awaits our discovering and who ought to become the acting center of our being and our life in Auroville. So this is what obviously the pioneers had. Some were saints, but the saints were very rare. Most of had a very strong vital. But to accept to live in that way, and in the case of Matrimandir, eventually to risk one life every day, only the psychic being could do that. And of course, idealism. So the difference is this. Psychic being is both ashram and Auroville. But to live in that way is the idealism of the pioneers. And unless we recover this, it cannot be Auroville. That's why everything is so slow and there is no town, because it makes no sense. You need 50,000 sadhaks. Then you will have the town and the money will come. Auroville is humanity's launch dream. Idealists from all over came to make it real. Faith as the soul reaches, minimal material needs as the starting point of the journey. This is the fact. Only those people could commence Auroville. And there was no other way to join Auroville unless you live absolutely with nothing. So the great adventure to build the avatar model town commenced from the minimal material needs. And this is what the Auroville prosperity was about. Wait, you misses a sentence, I have it here. The city of God, Sri Aurobindo evokes the avatar's model town of the supramental manifestation, the Mother heralds, and for which those in the avatar circle take birth over and again along the ages. Yes, we are reincarnations, exist forever. Those early full moon concreting did seal my destiny. Now, if you have questions,
Thank you, Paulette, for this beautiful presentation. Um, Thank you for bringing forth a time of Auroville which is often not seen and cannot even be imagined until unless through we go through the recorded memories or the archives in some ways. Thank you for being the archivist of some sort of an archivist of Auroville's memories. Uh, if I may ask, what do you think of the future and how do you see uh, the newcomers of Auroville? We are 50 years from the pioneering times and the times of the pioneers. Uh, do you still have the hope in what Mother said is probably the last hope?
So the first thing, Mother Admission Form, 1971, to be filled up and to be submitted to the Mother to be accepted, should be reinstated. I've been fighting for the past 41 years for this. It was happening, in fact, up to the beginning of the 90s. People spontaneously lived according to Mother guidelines. And for the simple fact that there was absolutely no other way. And I remember, oh, by the way, in this admission form, there are no fees. And this is the major difference. One had to support oneself for the first year, possibly. But if a person came without means and still was working effectively for the community, whether Matrimandir or somewhere else, he was immediately taken in charge and a basic accommodation was given. So you understand that simply this makes the complete difference. And then there is a point number 5, which in fact is the key to the Auroville prosperity. Those who are taken in charge by Auroville must give absolutely everything, whatever they own, to Auroville. You understand that these 2 points is exactly where we got lost. But
Why do
when
you say
we,
we got lost? Because I'm sure a lot of people gave everything. And what what would like having given everything? What is there to be lost?
no, I mean to give everything materially. I give you immediately an example. This comes from Piero. It's very sad that people today don't even know who is Piero, but Piero is the architect and engineer in site of Matrimandir. Roger was the architect who made the plan, but the one who executed and worked every day with the Aurovillians was Piero. So once he showed up, because the Auroville prosperity was applied rigorously in kind, with only very little pocket money. So, and Samshunda, who was Mother's secretary to Auroville, she said on him that he was his last hope, her last hope, was the one watching the Auroville prosperity. So Piero showed up once and he asked a little more money because he had something, I think medicine or stand, something to buy. And Samshunda did this with a fist on the table. He said, not one paisa more. To know what Auroville was during Mother years, people should read the Chronicle of Samshunda. He published 2 books. By the way, he received 4,000 letters and messages from the Mother. No one more than him received these things. But in these 2 books, he reports daily his discussion with the Mother on Auroville. And there is one on the Auroville prosperity. he asked the mother what to do because people come and ask the prosperity, it and he, and then he think, what if we wait? No, in fact, it's the mother who replied, wait a couple of months to see whether the person really has no other means. Then, in that case, you give. It would be enough to read some Schunder book. I'm sorry to use this word, but compulsory, so that people would know what what was Auroville during Mother years. I have myself compiled, and I've largely compiled, quoting some Schunder. This book has been published by Sayer, and Sayer returned it to me to give it for free to newcomers. You know how it ended up? First of all, it was never given for free because they said, no, we cannot give for free. So I said, all right, charge 100 rupees and take it as entry group. And as they were discussing this, and they made a presentoir to finally display the books, it never happened because the entry group room took fire.
I have a
So,
question, Paulette. Like, in absence of mother, how does this kind of a thing? That time, the faith was on mother. Mother was present. Uh, uh, then the ashram took over that role, or like, how does that happen in absence of that trust or the or figure? You know, then on whom does this faith? You are saying that it's completely inner faith to give up on something and then join a project which today you are anyways saying has gone kind of somewhere down the line, sometime around 90s or 80s, ideals got dropped, and what uh, and how does a newcomer or anybody have faith in all of a sudden in a system which you are saying that the faith has already been breached?
so the mother left in 1973, but I'm sorry to say, as long as the society was administering Auroville, they kept fulfilling the rules. And even in 85, when we were fighting, in fact, the fight with the Sri Aurobindo Society commenced in 1976. So 1985 were 9 years after. Even so, the rules were accepted. So I paid no newcomer fee. In fact, I had only to put the money for a return ticket. Then the moment I was accepted an Aurovillian, the money would be refunded. And I remember clearly that I signed a pledge as honorary voluntary worker. So to sign as honorary voluntary worker, it means no business, no private property, no private profits, not taking the Auroville prosperity, which is not a wage. Auroville prosperity was given only to those who had no other means. In
By,
my case,
by whom? By whom? But right now, we are in a situation that Orwellians ensure their own prosperity. Like we are, until
no,
we
no.
get the prosperity, like
So I tell you, the big upheaval started in the 90s. So it's not because of the act and it's not because of the government, but the moment the government took over and people start feeling a kind of security, the money started flowing, they started to build in a certain way, and the population changed. At the same time, Uli, who was the Aurolec founder and trustee, instituted the maintenances. You should know that when the maintenance came up, We were revolting. We didn't want the maintenance because the maintenance are a wage. And this is what, since then, the system goes on like this. So that you have people who don't need at all the money, but think, oh, I'm working for Auroville, so it's my right. And this is a maintenance, but it's not the Auroville prosperity. So in my case, I came, I live like that in the Green Belt, but when I came in 1983 from Canada, I had $50,000. And I supported myself and my daughter for over 20 years. I was not even going to the food store, to the free store, because free store should be for the people who have absolutely nothing. And why this was possible? Because the mother knew that as long as there was not the economic setup that she wanted for the galaxy, for the system engineering a galaxy, she could not ask people to jump in the void. So if you came with your own money, you were supporting yourself. But if you had nothing, then you would be taken in charge right away. You should also know that the system engineering galaxy, uh, the archival documentation has also been suppressed. So it's only me who has been writing and talking about this because I received personally the documentation from Suresh Indocha. But the galaxy was supposed to be built in 5 years by the Los Angeles Corporation, who had been cooperated with NASA, sending the first astronaut on the moon, and Sidney Firstman had come up with economic plan and already contacted banks so that the money would be collected with bonds like this and starting with the high-tech industries to raise the money to build the system engineering galaxy in 5 years. Then, once the town was built, the mother would have decided what to do with these industries, whether people would go back. And anyhow, the industries making money were outside the master plan. Inside the master plans, and on this there are a set of guidelines. She commenced in 1969, where she even said that these guidelines that she signs conclude saying those who don't want to give all the profits to the central fund should go somewhere else. So the mother is not only integral yoga and the supermind. The mother is the Shakti. The mother was very practical and very much grounded. The town, the guidelines were very practical. And it's not by chance that the one who embodied the galaxy, the Auroville, I mean, not the galaxy, the guidelines, the Auroville prosperity was Samshundar. Samshundar is the greatest sadhaks we ever had in Auroville. Samshundar was a millionaire. He gave up absolutely everything to the point that the mother gave him back some money, said, hey, you cannot do this. You have a wife and you have 3 children. You have to keep something for them. But that was Samshundar. And she had several people like Samshundar at the ashram. The greatest sadhaks were at this caliber and living. But that's why I've been talking only about Auroville. But I started writing my biography, and there is a part dedicated to the ashram. Because if I started talking, you should, for example, Nolini, the greatest disciple of Sri Aurobindo. He had a small room as office, and behind his bedroom, just divided by a curtain. You know that to go to the bathroom and taking shower, he had to cross 2 yards, passing in front of Samadhi, and he died over 90. Ornirodharan, the scribe of Savitri, his position was easier because he also had the bathroom outside, but at least there was a roof. He had not to cross 2 yards like Nolini. I could go on like this. I can send you privately this part. When I mean the avatar circle, I really mean it. These are incarnations. These is, yeah, because Sri Aurobindo and the mother said that they've always been behind all revolutions, including the Russian and the Chinese one. But the avatar cannot do the work alone. Avatar needs his people. So the avatar take birth with his own people, but at the same time take birth with the titan who will destroy everything. There is a conversation in the agenda whether the mother tells this to Sapre. So when the mission is over, the avatar withdraw for a while, and then when there is a chance, comes back, always with the same people, who will reincarnate again. This is Auroville. And it's not, in fact, Auroville, it's the eternal ideal society. Whenever you see a beginning of ideal society, it's the avatar or the vibhuti. The mother speaks about reincarnations like this, Sri Aurobindo not. But there are two that one of his great sadhaks asked him about, he didn't deny. And it was Caesar Augustus, which means the Pax Romana, and Leonardo da Vinci. So the avatar is always present, if not as an avatar, at least as a vibhuti. And very often when he's present as an avatar, is not even recognized because people want the big guru, the saint. The avatar is not the saint. Sri Aurobindo is very clear. Before the mission of the avatar, before the avatar awakes to his mission, he's just a very ordinary person with a married life, a sexual life. And if you see, Sri Aurobindo was married and mother was also married twice. But it took me a long time to understand what the avatar was. So when I came, I just accepted through faith whatever I found in Mother and Sri Aurobindo. And then little by little over the years, I understood. And then to me it became absolutely obvious. So this is one way, faith and idealism.
Thank you, Paulette. Thank you so much. Uh, 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 how do you see the current kind of atmosphere in Auroville, where there is supposedly a lot of fear? Uh, do you feel the same fear within you? And do you acknowledge that there is a thing of fear, but when people are talking about it, people are denying it, people are ensuring that nobody is scared of anything, but is this real? Like, well, nobody openly talks about it, but that is what we are right now into.
See, as I'm around, with Sri Aurobindo, the mother officially, for the past 52 years, of course, I had my up and down, but sooner or late, even when it seems very dark or I don't understand, I know that finally everything will become clear. So in my case, I took all this as Mahakali blow. The mother speaks about that. When there is absolutely nothing and the people obstinately refuse everything, then Mahakali strikes. And when Mahakali strikes hard. So the difference between the ordinary person and the sadhak is that the ordinary person complains, is frightened, is desperate, rejects, but the sadhaks is grateful. Sadhak knows that it was his fault. He was not able to get rid of the problem, and so Mahakali manifested. So if we could come to this, it would be something very positive. Because personally, I belong to no camp. I don't care. I'm not been voting since 2002, by the way, and for heavy reasons. My point is mother guidelines. Whether it is Auroville of the Sri Aurobindo Society, of the government of India, or I don't know, the International Advisory Council, I just don't care. To me, it's mother guidelines. But we have been freed all, all these years. And what we did, instead of passing the Auroville guidelines, by the way, and this was an issue raised by Sindhuja, which is very interesting, because Sindhuja also cares about the Auroville prosperity. And she raised another condition, because I talk about the mother admission form. But she raised also the other condition, which is the act itself. There is no 33% in the acts. In fact, I always define the acts as mother guidelines, the legal implementation of mother guidelines. So some Sindhuja went on at one of these monthly meetings saying, we have to abolish the 33%. Then we will have the money for the true Auroville prosperity, which is absolutely true. So when the government took over, as in fact it took over in 1988, but it was very large, like the Aurovillians do. So finally, and we had the previous governing board, and we should have understood that we could not go on like this with the previous governing board. We ignored that. In fact, I don't know if you remember that we had 3 task force, and one of them had organized a general meeting, and the topic of the general meeting was mismanagement of government grants.
Yeah, it is very unfortunate, but don't you think it would be giving units will generate revenue to give it to a bureaucracy which is compromised since 1981 itself in terms of purchasing lands, in terms of all so much corruption that you are talking about. How does anyone kind of trust the wealth with such a bureaucracy, or in fact strengthening them? Because one would still ask, to ensure the prosperity of this bureaucracy, where isn't it too expensive in terms of for those who are earning anything?
It's an emergency situation. So in emergency, that's it. But Srinivasa Murthy, who was up to a couple of years ago, was even the assistant secretary, told me the government of India is very patient, but the moment intervenes, he will strike.
Hmm.
And he also said, the moment you're able to govern yourself according to the mother, the government will move out. Personally, I'm convinced about this because no other government would have accepted the things that we have been doing in Auroville for the past 30 years. And it's only this fate of Sri Aurobindo and Mother that the Indian government has who can tolerate this. So it's sad because I feel we have already lost this chance too. If we had understood that the moment had come to revert completely, unconditionally to Mother guidelines, as it was happening during the Sri Aurobindo Society tenure, things would have finally. So the point is to return Auroville to the Mother. Whether it is the Aurovillian, the society, the government, I don't care. But this is the only chance we have, is Mother Auroville guidelines. Or whatever we do, for me, is totally irrelevant. Whether we build or not the city. Who cares about building a city if we don't have the people of the avatar, if we don't have the sadhaks, if we don't have those who don't give a damn about money, property, prestige, nothing, which is exactly the people who started Auroville were like this,
But
as we
those are
did
the people who will
time.
be doing it any which ways because they have nothing
Hmm?
to lose. They are the ones who would be working any which ways. Otherwise, the bureaucracy is too heavy for anything to work any which ways. It was always heavy and it is heavy. And we can make it even heavier to ensure that the only sadhak can function. And that is that. Well, right now,
I'm convinced of the power of the soul. Even if we had the most tyrannical thing, I'm still convinced that if we are sincere, it will prevail. And we are the only responsible of what's going on now. If we shift back to the mother, if we return our will to the mother, then everything will be all right. And the money will come, and the city will be built. And not just some city, the futuristic cities, because by the way, I've done 7 exhibitions on contemporary architecture with the greatest masters, because this is what Roger himself wanted me to educate Eurovillians, to make them know what is contemporary architecture and what Auroville must be about. So you should know that Luigi, who was the soul of our future, was going to all the Venezia Biennale and inviting the biggest architects and town planner. You know that they were willing to come and work for Auroville. They could never come because people didn't want them. So the world in such a desperate situation that in fact I'm convinced that it would be even more easier now to build the town and raise the capital to build the town out of despair because we have lost absolutely everything. When Mendel founded Auroville, it was 1968. It was the peak. The Western civilization has reached the peak, and also in terms of money. But now we have destroyed everything. So where we find the right people, those who go to Gaza, those who volunteers in the third world, in epidemics, those people will always exist. Idealists will always exist. If our we start again, we will have immediately all those people. And then we will fulfill also the other aspect of our will, which is not just human unity, but stop to war, stop to nuclear. Out of despair, as these people cannot, they cannot kill themselves, they have to do something. So they go one way or another. But if the real Auroville, if Mother Auroville starts, they will converge from all over the world, as we did during Mother years.
there can't be any declaration of sort. It exists. It pulls people, and it should continue to do that. Whom are we? Are we kind of expecting some kind of a declaration of sorts, or we are waiting for some individual to help us to return? Why do you think, as a society, is there a resistance of anything, and or is it a very natural resistance? It will overcome by time. There seems to be no correction to it. I mean, it depends. It appears that it only a force and only an individual can come and enforce it.
So the people are no longer the same. So the ashram, the society, Auroville, unfortunately, most of those people are gone. By the way, the big problem with the society was Navajata, not the society itself. They were fantastic people also in the society. So, but I should say that I have a tremendous admiration for the young people coming today to Auroville, because personally, today, I will never come. I'm still here because I lived that dream and I've seen that the dream was real. And so as soon as I lock the outer world and I go back to my inner world, which is that of the sadhaks and the pioneers, everything is wonderful. But the people who have not known anything of this and see what Auroville is now, this to me is really heroic. I have tremendous respect. And if I start talking to them and they start understanding what I'm talking, which is even more commendable, because in my case it was normal. We were all like this, whether it was the ashram or Auroville. But now it is abnormal. So that means that is inside them. And this is the psychic being. Psychic being is not the saint. Very often, the psychic being, people might have a very prominent psychic being, which to other people goes out unnoticed. But the psychic being is this need for light, for truth, for love, for sharing, for comradeship, companionship. And really, I hat off when I see people like, even today, I started talking, I don't know the name, this technician who was helping me. He perfectly understood what I was talking about. I never spoke to him before. So if we have people like this, there is hope.
Yes, thank you, Paulette. We thank you for reminding us of those early times when Mother was present, and even after that, when those ideals were being carried forward and people chose those tough circumstances and really could dedicate themselves. I understand there was a brief period where it was not so, maybe, and I really hope and I know for sure that here at least I meet every day almost young people who are extremely idealist, who may not join Auroville, but definitely do look up at us and to ask these questions. Though many and all of us who are here try our level best to kind of defend ourselves, or in most cases we have no answer whatsoever. We know that we are here because we simply love it and we like it. And are we doing enough or not? If you look at our pioneers, we are doing too little. And if you look at our current circumstances, I feel some people scared, or some people are doing it in spite of whatever restrictions or whatever. And much of the doing that is happening in Trust Me Polit is quite difficult to even articulate. The articulation is in the act itself. I know for sure that even while putting this thing up, where we would request the magic of Auroville to be represented in certain ways, it is extremely difficult. The space is extremely thin. People are not necessarily here uh, because they don't want to, but maybe because we do not have enough means to articulate these their engagements and their love, which they have, which they practice in a daily way in Auroville's living. In fact, I have had the opportunity of, it is that living actually, which is you meet on the streets in the afternoons, that strike you, which is absolutely not intellectual, that kind of kept me back. Um, uh, I, yeah, I think even in these difficult times, I am hopeful for Auroville to remain contagious and with this idealism that you are talking of. Thank you for bringing us the story again. Thank you for this small little contagion possibility that happens every time we meet our seniors. Thank you, Paulette. Thank you for joining us. Thank you very much.
And thanks you for having initiated this dialogue.
Thank you so much.